Siyofika nini lasiakona lasiako ndithi ewena ewena nawe siyofika nini lasiakona lasiako Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona Oh, the sea is cold and the sky is gray.
Look across the island into the day.
We are all islands till comes the day we cross the burning water. Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona A seagull wings across the sea
Broken silence is what I dream.
Who has the words to close the distance between you and me? Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona Asimbonanga ngumfowethu thina laphe khona laphe hleli khona ndithi ewena nawe siyofika nini lasiakhona lasiakho ndithi ewena nawe siyofika nini lasiakhona lasiakhona Asimbonanga
Mandela tina
laphe khona laphe hleli khona Asimbonanga ngumfowethu thina laphe khona lawafela khona
And of course, if that didn't tug at your heartstrings, I'm not sure what will. Just listening to that rendition, what a wonderful rendition there by Ngebagazi Mnukwana, who's a lecturer of music education at Stellenbosch University, and with her there, Lene Kun, who was one of her students previously, and she is from the Lamptey Musical Theatre School. And looking at the background against which they actually performed that, the demolition that took place here at District 6. And that, of course, a tribute not just to Nelson Mandela, but to the late, great Johnny Clegg as well, who passed away yesterday. And I think this is just the perfect setting to give us the tone for today's discussion. And we're coming to you from the District 6 Museum here in Cape Town, if you've just joined us. And we're going to touch on some of the discussion points now that we want to highlight on this Mandela Day in trying to understand how far we've come as a nation and how far we still have to go, as was sung in that song. When are we going to get to where we are trying to go? So let me get into this discussion immediately with our guests, and thanks so much to everybody who came through this morning, and hoping to have a real, honest and authentic discussion about the issues that not only the people of District 6 are still trying to address, but South Africa as a nation. And Dr. Verwoerd, Dr. Wilhelm Verwoerd, researcher and facilitator, Historical Trauma and Transformation Unit at Stellenbosch University. I want to start with you on the concept of reconciliation. And of course, Madiba stands head and shoulders above everybody else, not in South Africa alone, but in the world, as this unifier, this person who ultimately made the sacrifice of going to jail for the better part of his life, coming out and extending an olive branch to those who oppressed him. And many of us are expected to be like Madiba, to be like Mandela, but it's not easy. So when we talk about reconciliation, what exactly does that mean? How do you start?
Well, thank you for the question and for giving me this opportunity. I'm very conscious sitting in this space and looking at the backdrop, the 11th of February 1966. That was the time when my grandfather was Prime Minister. So in some sense, I embody the group, the family, the people in South Africa who are responsible for this demolition, for this suffering that has been caused in this community, but also in many other parts of South Africa. So when I now speak about reconciliation today, and I dare to use the language of Madiba Mandela, President Mandela, I need to be very humble about that and be very careful that when I use it too easily and when I embrace the hand that has been given to us too easily without also committing myself to restitution, then I actually undermine the legacy of President Mandela. So that really is for me the key point I want to get across when you look like me and you speak from my kind of background, that we need to almost reclaim the true legacy of President Mandela and not the domesticated Madiba that has been embraced by so many white South Africans.
And I love that you say that, the domesticated Madiba, because we tend to have this notion of Madiba as just the Madiba we saw post-94 and in the lead up to that. But Madiba, at some point in his life, was an activist. He was a man who was willing to take up arms in order to secure the rights for his people. And we seem to have sanitized that version of Madiba. How is that hampering our reconciliation effort as a nation?
Well, I would love to hear from other people, but my sense is that white South Africans and people from my community have contributed to the disillusionment amongst young black South Africans with our former president, because we've actually looked at the grandfatherly, friendly, embracing figure, and we've not actually embraced the freedom that he fought for and that he was willing to give his life for. So I think it comes with a lot of responsibility for people like me to actually wake up to the real meaning of what it means to take the hand of somebody like former President Mandela and not go the easy route of spending 67 minutes perhaps today doing something practical, but not for the rest of the year, committing ourselves to actually sharing our privileges, sharing the benefits that we still have as a result of unjust discrimination, and make a real commitment to reconciliation.
Mazibuko, with regard to this reconciliation effort, and as Dr. Verwoerd points out, we tend to deal with this as if it is some sort of event, 67 minutes here, a day there. Why is it that we are not coming to grips with reconciliation as a nation, even though this is what the world essentially hails us for?
We took far too quick steps to move on without dealing with the core root causes of oppression and exploitation. We should have paid attention to redistribution of wealth, to redress of the land question, but also we should have said reconciliation is not possible without justice, because reconciliation then becomes empty, becomes hollow, becomes embraced in a false way, and without actually people checking their privilege, people giving up what they had benefited from an ill-gotten system, and therefore the fundamental questions of land, of the economy, of wealth are at the heart of reconciliation.
But we see today people being impatient. You're saying on the one hand that we move too quickly. In which aspect? How did we move too quickly? From where to where?
We did not deal head-on brutally with the question of race and racism. And, for example, white supremacy in South Africa. We assumed that we are one rainbow nation without actually asking the questions FISMA's followers asking about the construction of colonialism, about decolonization, and the need for that to be dealt with head-on. If we had done that, we would have gone a long way to deal with the demon of racism. That's just one aspect.
And then, if I can come to you then, Fred Robertson, the place where we are in today, you know, you look and around us there are so many very poignant and very profound sayings, you know, that people have penned here. Ahmed Dango, the one I'm looking at directly in front of me, it says, "It struck me that our history is contained in the homes we live in, that we are shaped by the ability of these simple structures to resist being defiled." And yet that's what happened to so many communities. And yet, when we talk about reconciliation, we talk about it as an abstract concept almost, without really coming down to that, the destruction of people's homes and how they were defiled in their individuality as well as community systems.
Thanks. I thank you. I think that you're right. I don't think that we realize how many decades it takes to reconstruct communities. If we look at TV and we see the wars in the Middle East and things like that, I think that's going to take well more than 100 years for those people to reconstruct their lives. And I can just see in District 6 what's happened to the community where I grew up. The street I see behind you is St. Philip's Street. That's the street I grew up in. This was my playground. And if you have to think now what's happened on the Cape Flats, where most of my community has been bandaged to, where we now have to call in the army so many years after 1966. So I don't think that we actually realize when wars happened, because this was a war. Apartheid was a war against the people of South Africa. And I remember we sit here in this thing and we talk and it's correct, we must reconcile our communities, we must rebuild our South African society. And it's good that we sit with the grandson of Dr. Verwoerd. But when I grew up and we heard on radio, Springbok radio at that stage, that in the streets that Verwoerd was murdered, we rejoiced. There was a party out in District 6. We were all over the coast by our teachers who then already was preaching reconciliation and compassion. So compassion was always taught from those who suffered most. Reconciliation always from those who suffered most. And while Madiba tried to reconcile, I don't think that the community who benefited most gave enough.
What would you have liked to see? What would you have liked to see as an extension, as an expression of, you know, that hand from the community that benefited?
I think that we have to hold hands and move on. I think that they have to realize that, you know, post-94, there were probably more white millionaires created in this country than ever before. So the benefits of a new society was extended to everybody. There were more houses built, there were more houses were electrified, more schools. Yes, we can complain about those things. More people are going to university in a new society. we have to now give it a lot more quality. It was quantity given, we need to give it quality.
But I want to move to Joanne Lewis next to you and talk about this reconciliation effort in the aftermath of what happened during the apartheid years, because there are new nuances at play now. If you think about, we talk about white people owning their privilege and looking at their racism and owning that. But this very District 6 that we talk about, that this museum is, paying homage to, the people who lived here, a mixed community, moved on to areas like the Cape Flats. And then today we are struck with a situation where those very people who were moved from here, their descendants, are racist towards others. Are we owning that?
Yeah, I think that is what you're saying. It is, that is in the reality. And I think in terms of those of us that, in terms of from the colored communities and the black communities, there is a sense of denial when it comes to owning our level of racism. And, for me, I always say, because of where we've grown up and because of the society, we are all racist. Because in terms of, our upbringing. And so, as you said, when it comes to our inner Mandela, it starts there. It starts in the heart, where we need to start changing. Within our homes, we need to start teaching our children. When we make reference to, and my kids are always, and they say, Mom, that guy. And then they'll say, they're trying to describe the person, and they say the white guy. And I said, why is it a white guy? It's a person, And so in terms of owning it, we need to start in our homes, do it, but not be quick to just point a finger to the part of our society that has always benefited, in terms of, and always just pointing and saying in terms of the whites are racist, but we never owning that. And so we need to start everybody. Within our homes, we need to start changing. We need to start changing our thinking. We need to start changing the way we speak, and address it in that. And I know you've now asked me about the racism, but coming to reconciliation, key to reconciliation is when we've not dealt with the hurts. We've not dealt with the pains. I'm privileged to be, in terms of one of the returnees that is living in District 6 now. However, when I meet older residents that has lived here and, in terms of compatriots of my mom, and I hear them speaking, I don't, especially, and if I meet strangers, I don't tell them where I'm staying because I feel guilty.
Why do you feel guilty?
Because there's this generation, there is all this older people that is longing to come back. And yet, because there's a lack of political will, on every level, to ensure that this process is expedited, to ensure, that those that have submitted their claims are given that, in terms of they are afforded that opportunity to come back. Fortunately, my grandma at the age of 99, she was privileged. She had 5 years, she was 95 when we moved in here. So she had 5 years of being privileged to be back. We still have older people, 80 odd people, 90 odd, that is still waiting, longing, and it's all because there's no will. And so in terms of...
And we're going to come back to that question, because why is there no will? Where is it breaking down? Why are people not being brought back, even though this has been a process that's been ongoing for quite some time? Then let me ask you, Kasim Khan, in terms of the role that religion and religious institutions can play in the reconciliation effort, do you think that they are doing enough?
Well, certainly everyone can do enough. I think I want to address this issue of reconciliation from the point of view of time. Will it take long? And I think I want to specifically, given my experience in the Imam Harun Foundation and with victims of families of the apartheid era crimes, I think that time is running out, and that particularly perpetrators who were involved in apartheid era crimes need to tell the truth, because reconciliation is about telling the truth. And if you are going to want to allow these matters to be swept under the carpet and say, I have no obligation to actually tell you how your father was killed, how your brother was murdered, and then lied on top of it and said he fell off some steps, he hung himself. Now, these things are the types of hurt that we can address right now. And one of the ways I think we can do that is that the institutions that have been built specifically to address these apartheid-era crimes need to be empowered, and that they need to prioritize the work that they were doing, such as the National Prosecuting Authority.
Is it a question of empowerment, or is it a question of will that some have pointed out? Because the TRC handed over some 300 odd files to the National Prosecuting Authority, of which none have been addressed, save the ones that were taken up by the families themselves. Ahmed Timol's family, the family of Noktula Simelane,
Yes.
They took up those in their private capacity. So is it a question of institutions not being capacitated, or is it a lack of political will?
Well, absolutely, there has been a period that it was specifically a lack of political will. In fact, some people would go as far as to say it was a period of betrayal, because many of these cases were sat on. People were instructed, and they said that there was political interference in the National Prosecuting Authority, telling the people working there that they should not move on these cases. Now, it's not just political will, and this is why I'm also asking ourselves, what do we then ask ourselves when we are celebrating Mandela Day and we are saying, well, Mandela was this warm and fuzzy man that wanted everybody to be nice with each other. Well, did he ask the family members of those that were killed that they want to be warm and fuzzy with him? Or did he actually say, I understand your pain, I suffered alongside with you? And so the Mandela that we are recreating is being trivialized so that we can suppress and forget what had actually happened. And we will not forget what has happened, and we will continue to make a noise and implore particularly our new Minister of Justice to prioritize these matters, because until we as a nation get to grips with how apartheid really worked, who were the perpetrators, what exactly they did, will nobody be able to really understand why there is so much anger on the Cape Flats, why people are killing each other. I look down here on this map that says Pontac Street. I remember what our house looked like the night before it fell in, because of how the district, how the group areas officials actually came to destroy houses. So we will never forget those things, and nobody is going to tell us and remember us, but remind us and tell us apartheid was in the past. Put it behind you.
But perhaps we haven't done enough in terms of tapping into people's feelings, the anger that Kasim talks about, Jeff, as I come to you, because you also suffered that pain and humiliation of being forcefully removed from Loyola in Simonstown. So talk to us about that feeling. Be human about it. Put a human face to what it feels like to be removed from your home for no other reason than being black.
Sakina, I don't know if there are words for that, or if there's a way to express that. It's a mixture of feeling humiliated, feeling hurt, feeling displaced. I always share with people the fact that we came from Simonstown, and being a fairly mixed community. We were dumped in Gugulethu, and we could speak isiXhosa, could not read it. And a whole lot of people dropped out of school. I don't know whether it was the intention, because we came from African-speaking communities, went to Gugulethu, and we had to learn Umongo Moya for oxygen. I mean, Umongo, it did not make sense. People dropped out of school, and some people had to change their surnames so that they can go back to those places, like the Mbotyas became Puota. You know, those kind of, the Tim Kulu, the Grootboels. So it is difficult to explain the feeling. I don't have the words to capture that. However, Sakina, one of the things that I want to echo is what has been coming through here, maybe in an indirect way to others. 25 years after 94, we're celebrating Mandela Day. Does Mandela Day reflect the spirit of Mandela? And I say no. We use Mandela Day as an shame day. Us who've got money will do this for the crash, paint a house, and so on. We use Mandela Days to show of what we have accumulated over the 25 years. It's like spitting in the face of those people that you spoke about that suffered, and those people who are trying to reconcile with you, and to telling them, no, once a year we'll paint your house. And I said, I'm trying to capture those feelings. I'm trying to answer your question without having the words to answer it, Sakina. And I said, if you look at the sense of arrogance, especially amongst the privileged community, wherever you talk, no, that was 25 years, it's a new South Africa. There's nothing that hurts more than somebody who tells you, no, that is in the past. You know, when there's an army, when 48 people died in one weekend in the Cape Flats, and they safely escaped in Constantia or Camps Bay. And I said, there's nothing hurts like that, it's an insult. So as long as the attitudes have not changed, as it was said earlier on, we've got a long struggle ahead of us.
A very long one indeed, and of course it is International Mandela Day today, and we're having this discussion in that context, you know, but trying to get real with the issues of why it is that even though we birthed as this nation, this great statesman that the world looks up to, we are struggling. We are struggling as a nation, and perhaps we are not what the world perceives us to be. So we're going to try and get in touch with, you know, some of these struggles and why we are struggling to reconcile as a nation. You know, we were known as the Rainbow Nation. Everybody held South Africa up as this poster child in the world of how to reconcile nations. And yet, the real story of South Africa is that we're not quite there. But I quickly want to go to the back there to some of the younger people and just get a sense from them about how they feel about reconciliation, for example. Let me start with you, Sibongile Sam. You know, listening to what some of the people who've lived here, who've gone through these forceful removals, the pain that they still suffer today, the struggle that we are having in forging ahead as a nation. What are your sentiments listening to all of this?
Yeah, I'm an early childhood developmental practitioner. So now I'm going to start with the basic meaning of what reconciliation is, because I have a feel that a majority of people didn't actually even understand the concept of reconciliation. Because if you look at the majority of South Africans, you'd find that some are not like literate and educated. Now, the basic meaning of reconciliation is restoring friendly relationships. And now, if South Africans understood that reconciliation is a process of restoring friendly relationships, then I feel that the process could have been fast-tracked. Hence, now we are still sitting with the same problem that we experienced before 1994.
But how do you restore those relationships in the absence of truth, as some have pointed out, in the absence of justice? How do you restore those relationships?
I feel that there was supposed to be a process of reparations first before we speak about reconciliation. For an example, if you take what belongs to me and then you feel that tomorrow we're supposed to be to reconcile, I don't think there'll be a proper way of restoring a relationship up unless I'm regaining what I've lost.
Very important concept, reparation, and we'll address that when we talk about the economic transformation that is also severely lacking. Aspasia, I thought I saw you with the mic. Just very briefly, as a young person listening to this discussion, what do you make of this, the reconciliation process or the lack thereof?
As the youth and us, we too are struggling with the concept because we don't know. Our textbooks, they give us the bare minimum. They just give us the names, faces, the paragraphs are this much. So we too are angry because we are misinformed. We don't know. We don't even know the struggles that each other we face, that our families still face. So there is a really long way for reconciliation because we need to actually sit down and have proper conversations with each other.
Let's hope that this is the start of that. All right. We're going to go to a quick break. We're going to go to a sport break, and then we're going to go back to studio. We still have to do the news and other regular features, but we'll come back to the District 6 Museum. And do feel free to also send us your messages, your questions that you may have, your contributions to the discussion. But for now, let's take a break.